There's the well-known story with the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe that happened once after Yom Kippur, after Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, where the Alter Rebbe says to his son, the Mittler Rebbe, and he called him by his name, he said, Berel, mit was hast du gedavnt? What was your meditation? What was your hisbonenus? What was your contemplation in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? So the Mittler Rebbe answered his father that he did the hisbonenus of the Chol Kemel Lefanechas Tishtachave, that the Igulei Ak are Makifim Raglei Ha'asiyah, which means, for all intents and purposes, a contemplation into a very high level of godliness, that because it is so high, it embraces everything, even the lowest level. Now the Mittler Rebbe wasn't a fool, and when the Alter Rebbe asks his son what he davened with, of course he used the opportunity to return the favor. And he says to his father, Tata mit was hast du gedavent? So the Mittler Rebbe says to his father, the Alter Rebbe, and what did you daven with? And the Alter Rebbe says, mitten stender, with the stender, with the lectern, with the piece of wood on which his siddur was sitting. This is a famous Chassidish word. And of course the question is, what kind of answer is the Alter Rebbe giving? And the answer basically is that the Alter Rebbe is saying that there's godliness everywhere. And instead of contemplating about bringing God from heaven to earth, bringing light from heaven to earth to illuminate the otherwise cold, dark, and death world with light and warmth and life, identify the God which is the world, the godliness which is already the world. And this is what he meant to say, I don't have to think about where the Eibishter is coming from and where the Eibishter is going to. The piece of wood my siddur was sitting on is a lakus, is atmos of a lakus, as it's hidden inside a piece of wood. And if I could contemplate and identify the lakus in that piece of wood, that's the deepest idea. In other words, what's the discussion between the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe? It's the old question, what is the meaning of the word, of the phrase, Gili Elikus? What does it mean to reveal godliness? Anplecken Getlechkeit, Gili Elikus, to reveal godliness. So there is a standard understanding, there's a classic understanding, and then there's a deeper understanding. The standard understanding is that Gili Elikus is like sunlight. The sun is 93 million miles from the earth. And the light of the sun travels through the emptiness of the atmosphere 93 million miles, and it hits our atmosphere, and it hits our earth, and it gives us light and warmth and life. And that's how we exist, that's how we survive, that's how we keep ourselves warm, illuminated, and fed, nourished, energized. So in this metaphor, in this mashal, godliness is coming from someplace else. Godliness is coming from heaven to earth. The earth by itself is cold, dark, and death. And the light of the sun and the nimshal, the light of godliness, is providing light and warmth and life. But of course, Chassidus would then come along and ask an axiomatic question, a basic question, an elementary question. And the question would be that if this world by itself is cold and dark and death, and light, warmth and life are coming from without, have to come from someplace else, what is the basis of the existence of the world before the light arrives? What is the basis, or how does the world exist before the godliness reaches from heaven to earth? And of course, the Efer Chasidus has a very different idea. And the different idea is that there's godliness in everything, even in a stone. You don't have to bring God from heaven to earth, you have to identify the God within the earth. So these are two basic concepts of Gili Elikus, of revealing godliness. The first idea is a more traditional idea, that godliness is light that's coming from someplace else to illuminate the world which is by itself dark. And the second idea, that the darkness of the world, inasmuch that there is a world that has God within it, and revealing godliness is not bringing heaven to earth, but finding heaven within earth, uncovering the God within the world. To give you an example, when it comes to the idea of Mashiach, so of course we all know the famous word that the Rebbe repeated so frequently, that the difference between the word goyla, which means golus, and the word geula is an aleph. But when it comes to adding the aleph to goyla, to make it into gula, there's also two ideas, at least two ideas. The first idea is that you're bringing the aleph from someplace else. Goyla is a darkness, and the aleph is added from outside of goyla into goyla to make it a state of redemption. A deeper idea is that you're not bringing the aleph from someplace else into goyla to make from goyla into gula. You're finding in the pnimius of golas itself geula. Anoichi haster aster ponem b'yemahu, in the hester ponem there's anoichi, to find God in the golas itself, and that's a much deeper concept of adding aleph to make from goyla to geula, because you're not bringing it from without, you're finding it from within. And this, of course, is the meaning of this discussion between the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe, where the Mittler Rebbe describes his meditation about bringing godliness into the world, and the Alter Rebbe responds by saying that his meditation was by finding the godliness of the world itself. It's not from without, it comes from within. This discussion goes to the heart, it goes to the essence, it goes to the deepest understandings that first of all Chassidus teaches, and on a deeper level that Chassidus is. And I'm beginning this Maamar, Padah B'Shalom Tafshin Chavav, with the introduction that I just gave. The Maamar we have in front of us, and as you see, there's two of them. It's a Hemshech. The first is Padah B'Shalom, which the Rebbe said Yitzhak Kislev in 1965 to 66, Tafshin Chavav. And the second one is Chanukah. It's famous. It's a very, very deep Maamar, which of course the Rebbe edited in 1991 to 92, Tafshin and Beis, which is based on the Hemshech of the Rebbe Rashab from Ha'eta, Tafresh Ayin Hey. It's part of the Hemshech Ayin Beis. The Rebbe Rashab said this Maamar in Tafresh Ayin Hey in Lubavitch, which means 1914 to 1915. The Rebbe did not repeat this Maamar 100 years later, he repeated this Maamar 101 years later. Why? We always know that the Rebbe was very particular about jubilees and things of this sort. I have no idea, but that's the fact. 101 years after the Rebbe Rashab said the Maamar in Lubavitch, the Rebbe said the Maamar, not 150, I'm saying it wrong. 51 years after the Rebbe Rashab said the Maamar in Lubavitch, the Rebbe repeated it in 1965 to 66, Padah B'Shalom. Part of this Maamar is that the Rebbe Rashab in the Maamar actually explains what Chassidus is. That Midas Chassidus is to make the Midas Tivya, Midas Alakim. You'll see it in Mitzvah Hashem in the Maamar. You're not going to see it tonight, you'll see it eventually. There's a number of things that are outstanding about this. The first is that this is the same Fabrengen where the Rebbe said the classic masterful Sikha that we all call in Yonah Shel Teres HaChasidus, or in English, on the essence of Chasidus. This Fabrengen, this Kislev Tafshin Chavav, the Rebbe began that discussion. He spoke about it at great length, and then he would follow up, elaborating further and further in the subsequent Fabrengens for quite a while. And then, of course, the Sikha was written up and edited and published a few years later, 1971, Tafshin Lamed Aleph, when the first Krach, the first volume of the Sefer Erechim of the Chabad Encyclopedia was published. This Maamar, this Sikha, was printed in the back, and it's considered by many the Rebbe's introduction to the Encyclopedia of Chassidus, to the Sefer Erechim. So in the same Fabrengen that the Rebbe spoke that Sikha, he spoke this Maamar. And there are some ideas that overlap between this Maamar and that Sikha in terms of understanding what Chassidus is. That Sikha is predicated on the idea that Chassidus is Nyan HaYechida, the deepest level of the neshama, the deepest level of Torah, or to say it in different words, the level of maximum unity, or virtually maximum unity. And there's a lot of similarities between the thrust of this Maamar, the direction, the end of this Maamar, and that Sikha. But we're going to learn the Maamar. But I want to continue my introduction. In other words, I'm not ready to start just yet. I'm going to continue my introduction by asking a question. What is Chassidus? What is Chassidus? In that Fabrengen, all those years ago, 50-something years ago, the Rebbe asked the question, what is Chassidus? And he answered the question that Chassidus is Yechida. So obviously I'm not coming to Chas v'Shalom offer a different insight than the Rebbe offers. God forbid. But I wish to use different words to underscore what that means and make a point as a way of introducing the Maamar which we have in front of us. And I'll explain to you how I'm asking the question. Is Chassidus milmayla lamato or is Chassidus milmata lamayla? Is Chassidus something whose influence on the world is like a light that comes from without, outside of the world, added to the world? Or is Chassidus something which is coming from within, where nothing is added from without, but rather the world itself uncovers the godliness within itself? Which of these two is Chassidus? That's the question. Or to say it in other words, is the Mittler Rebbe's idea of Chassidus, of Avodah, more consistent with the message of Chassidus, or is the Alter Rebbe's idea of Avodah more consistent with the message of Chassidus? And before you answer the question, you have to understand the dynamics of the question. If we say that Chassidus is about bringing out a light from within, that means Chassidus is about struggle, because the world is dark, and if the world is going to extract light from within itself without an external inspiration, then there's going to be the struggle of the darkness and the light of the world in order to extract that light. The upside of struggle, of course, is pnimius, that it's earned and it's thorough and it's deep. And the downside of struggle is that even when you succeed, your success is limited based on the limitations of the one doing the succeeding. On the other hand, if you say Chassidus is a light that comes from without, so it's much more peaceful. There's no struggle. But there's also no pnimius. When light comes from heaven to earth, and it changes the situation on earth, the earth is not changing itself. In other words, the earth is not changing internally, the earth is being overwhelmed by that light. And therefore the question, which is Chassidus? Is Chassidus comparable to light that comes from heaven to earth and gives light and life and warmth to the otherwise cold, dark, and death earth? Or is Chassidus the idea of uncovering the light from within, as the Alter Rebbe said to the Mittler Rebbe? And for the purposes of this discussion, the answer is going to be it's both. Chassidus is a light that comes from without, there's no question about it. Or in the language of this Maamar, Chassidus is Shalom, Chassidus is Torah. But, however, the method of Chassidus, the approach of Chassidus, is that it's a light that shines from without, that touches and extracts and reveals the light that's within. In other words, the idea of Chassidus is to shine light to a place of darkness. But the idea of Chassidus is not to shine light to a place of darkness and that light will transform the darkness. But rather the light of Chassidus is meant to shine to a place of darkness and identify and bore through and bring to the surface the light that's within. So although Chassidus is coming from heaven to earth, it's not the heavenly light that's affecting the world, it's the heavenly light which is triggering a light from within to be brought forward. And that's really the whole idea of Chassidus, which of course explains, amongst other things, the well-known Chassidic expression that the Alter Rebbe said that if he had an option, he would have named the Chassidic movement the Tshuva movement. Because the concept of a chassid is tshuva, meaning to say that his avodah is b'koyach atzmei. What he has is his own effort, which comes from inside himself, which is what the concept of tshuva is. The way the story is told is that when the Alter Rebbe was in prison, he was asked, Hayitochen Chassidim took themselves the title Chassidim, and they gave their opponents the title Misnagdim. It seems very arrogant and self-serving to call your movement chassid and your opponent Menagid. So the Alter Rebbe said, Chassidim believe in Hashgacha Pratis. They believe in the divine hand. Chassidim never take anything for themselves. The name Chassid was given to Chassidim not by Chassidim but by Olam Misha. People who were not Chassidim but were not involved in the Misnagdish opposition to Chassidus looked at Chassidim and said that they're Yerei Shamayim and they're Mahadeh b'mitzvahs and doing things Lifnim Yishuras Adin. They were the ones who gave the Chassidic movement the title, the denotation of Chassidim. And the Alter Rebbe said, had he had his way, he would have named the Chassidic movement Tshuva. Because the idea of Chassidus is a light that shines from without, that arouses the light from within, which is what tshuva is, a person's own light that's being brought out. The Alter Rebbe went on to say that the reason he isn't naming the Chassidic movement the tshuva movement, because he doesn't want it to seem like those who are not Chassidim are not in the category of tshuva and by the tshuva. But this, in short, is how you need to understand Chassidus. Chassidus is an Eir Elyon. Chassidus is a light that comes from heaven to earth. But what makes Chassidus deep is that this light that comes from heaven to earth arouses the light from within and wakes it up. And because it's arousing a light from within and waking it up, Chassidus is truly a tshuva movement, meaning to say it's not about heaven affecting earth, but heaven affecting that earth should affect itself, should wake itself up, milmata lamayla, from the bottom to the top. This is really one of the ways of explaining what Chassidus is. We have a Maamar in front of us that's going to talk about two things: light and darkness. Light that comes from heaven to earth, and the extracting, the uncovering the light within the darkness. And the Maamar is going to, in effect, in other words, provide a variety of levels for this. And of course, the principle is going to be that the light comes from higher, it reaches lower. When you have a light that reaches the darkness, it awakes, it arouses the light within the darkness, but the degree to which the light from heaven can arouse the light from below depends on the power of the light, the intensity of the light. If it comes from a lower level, it could only reveal the light from within to a more measured degree, to a level of light which is closer to the surface. If it's a higher and a deeper light, it can awaken that something which is much darker should also have the light within itself ignited and triggered and aroused and brought forward. When the very highest light is revealed, it reveals the godliness of darkness itself. And in the Maamar, there's going to be a series of levels. There's David, there's Shlomo, there's Mashiach, different stages in Mashiach. And what's going to separate one stage from the other stage is this tandem. How deep is the light, and therefore how low is the extraction? How deep within the darkness does the light reach to extract the light from within and raise it up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? That's what the Maamar is going to be about. We're not going to learn the Maamar tonight. We're going to learn only the beginning and the end, the Psicha. And Mitzvah Hashem, over the next several classes, I'm not sure yet whether it'll be 2 more or 3 more, but there's certainly going to be, besides for tonight, 2 other classes, perhaps 3. And the Mitzvah Hashem, the plan is B'li Neder of Ezer Hashem Yisbarach, that when we learn this one, we'll also learn the next one, because the 2 Maamarim are a series, they're a Hemshech, that the Rebbe were edited and distributed in the winter of Tafshin Nun Beis. So the B'li Neder, the Mitzvah Hashem, the plan is to learn both of these. But tonight we're going to learn only the Aschol of Asiyim. And the Aschol of Asiyim is going to revolve around this idea that Shalom, Padah b'Shalom, Shalom means light, that shines from heaven to earth, that reaches in and pulls out light from the deepest darkness. And the higher the light is, the deeper and the lower the light reaches, until the deepest and the highest levels, as you'll see in Mitzvah Hashem and the Maamar. So with this introduction, without any further ado, let's read the Maamar. Okay. Padah b'Shalom nafshi. You redeemed, David HaMelech, King David is speaking, you redeemed in peace, or with peace, my soul. Mikrav li, from a battle which I fought. And of course the word mikrav doesn't only denote a battle. It denotes or connotes hand-to-hand combat, a battle where the 2 enemies look into each other's eyes, which is very intense and very powerful. And David HaMelech says that I fought a krav, a battle that was very close and very intimate, and I was redeemed, I won. And not only was I redeemed and I won, but it was many were together with me. Now, I just want you to know that there were this. How many Maamarim from all the 7 Rebbeim, beginning with the Alter Rebbe till our Rebbe, are there in the Pasuk Padah b'Shalom nafshi? If you told me 100, it's probably an understatement. There's probably more. You know, when in our generation you have Maamarim of Yud Kislev and Yutes Kislev, and then of course Yud Beis Tammuz. So you can have theoretically 3 Padah b'Shaloms in 1 year or more. And when you multiply that times all the generations, there's quite a few Padah b'Shaloms. Now, some of the Maamarim Padah b'Shalom really don't speak about Padah b'Shalom. It's just a Psicha, Haschol and a Siyum. But those Maamarim that do speak about Padah b'Shalom, there's basically, and the word basically, of course, is a bad word because you want to use the word precisely, but basically there's 2 types, 2 styles to these Maamarim. One style of these Maamarim is the Mittel Rebbe's Padah b'Shalom, which is in Shari Tshuva, that the Maamar goes on the Pasuk, Padah b'Shalom nafshi mikrav l'kibrab hayimadi. The key word is the word Shalom, the redeemed in peace, and the rest of it follows that notion, Shalom. The other Maamarim go on the Gemara, that on this Pasuk, Padah b'Shalom nafshi, and you'll see it in the very first paragraph here, This is the Gemara in Masechta Brachos. It's footnote 4. That Padah b'Shalom nafshi mekrav l'kibir ab ha'yimadi means teira aveda gemilas chasadim. So the Maamar that go on the pasuk directly deal with Shalom alone, which basically and generally is teira. But the Maamar that go on the Gemara explain not only Padah b'Shalom, but they explain the idea of teira aveda and gemilas chasadim. And these Maamar, so to speak, go in different directions. They're different styles. This Maamar is really the second style. It goes mostly on the Gemara and Teira Veda and Gemilas Chasadim. But like I said, the idea of Padah b'Shalom is also discussed. Now, before we even go further, Padah b'Shalom is an oxymoron, right? If a person is in jail and you redeem him from prison, that's not peaceful. That's a struggle. Yesterday he was in jail, now he's free. But the fact that he was in prison yesterday means that the fact that he was redeemed today can't be called peaceful. And it's certainly not the case when combatants, when two sides fight a war, beating each other up, killing each other, Rahman al-Islam. How can you say two nations, two groups of people engaged in a combat, in a struggle that's powerful and deep and life and death, and then one side wins and the other side loses it, and you call it Padah b'Shalom, called peace. There's nothing peaceful about war. There's nothing peaceful about war. So how do you use the word Shalom in the context of a krav, of a milchama? This is the basic question of the Maamar. And of course, this is the issue which all the Maamarim struggle with. How do you explain that krav, that a war, and especially a war that's so intimate, that it's hand to hand, you look your enemy in the eye, should end in a way that's called Padah b'Shalom? Now the answer to the question in short, the answer to the question basically is the following. The nature of combat, the nature of war is that you cannot really have a battle unless the two sides are evenly matched. If one side is so much stronger than the other, the battle is over before it begins. For two nations to engage in a conflagration, in an outbreak of violence, each side has to believe they could win, or at least have some hope they could win. So the very nature of combat assumes that I'm going to bludgeon you and you're going to bludgeon me. That's the very nature of it. Which is why, what does it mean to win a war? To win a war doesn't mean you defeated your enemy. To win a war means you just lost less than your enemy lost. Two nations beat each other up. The question is not who wins. The question is who loses less and who loses more. Who can afford to lose less? Who can afford to lose more? That's how winner is determined. That's not Padah b'Shalom. Padah b'Shalom is when the two sides engage in a battle. And the assumption that allows this battle to take place in the first place is that they're evenly matched enough to justify a confrontation. And then one of the two sides has a secret weapon. And that secret weapon tilts the battle so decisively that it stops being a battle. Or to say this in other words, when two nations fight and one side wins and the other side loses, the loser isn't vanquished. The loser licks its wounds, goes back, builds new weapons, rebuilds the army, waits a little while and fights again. That's the whole history of Europe. The wars never really finished. They were interrupted and then they were resumed. Because when two nations are equal and they bludgeon each other, the loser simply waits for a better day and fights again. Padah b'Shalom is a very different idea. You have two nations on a battlefield and they're fighting incessantly, they're fighting fiercely. And one of the two sides has a weapon which renders the battle totally unequal. And the simplest example for this would be the atomic bomb. During World War II, millions, tens of millions of people were killed. Both sides, all sides, thought that they would win. And they fought fiercely. When the atomic bomb was dropped, it became clear to the Japanese that it was no longer a war. Unless they wanted to lose every single man, woman, and child living on the island of Japan. They could have done that. And they wisely chose against it because they realized that the war was not a war. Can't fight a war where your opponent can kill 100,000 people by dropping one bomb. It's impossible. Because the two sides are not evenly matched at all. So when two nations engage in combat and one nation wins and the other nation loses, that's not Padah b'Shalom. But when two nations engage in combat and one of the two comes up with an armament, with a weapon, with a tool that renders the battlefield totally unequal, the victor is called Padah b'Shalom. Why? Because the enemy, the vanquished, the defeated, doesn't only lose he curses the day he ever started the fight and wishes he could be friends with his opponent and has a real desire to make peace. When you realize that you're outmatched by your opponent in a way that renders any effort on your part to fight completely futile, you turn around and you want to be a friend. In the expression which is used in the Maamar, beginning with the middle of Rebbe's Padah b'Shalom, Gam Oivav Yashlim Ima. Your enemy wants to be your friend. He wants to be your friend not because he's such a nice guy, but because he sees that it's useless to even think about opposing. And this is where you would use the word Padah b'Shalom. So long as two nations fight and they're more than or less evenly matched, one wins, the other loses, that's not Padah b'Shalom. But one side has a secret weapon, that changes the dynamics. And then you have a victory that's coming from war, from blood, that's nevertheless called Padah b'Shalom because it's so transcendent and so decisive. So now let's talk about this. Who said Padah b'Shalom? David HaMelech. King David said Padah b'Shalom. Padah b'Shalom was said by David HaMelech in his struggle against his son Avshalom, who declared himself the king of Yehuda, king of the Jews, and made a civil war, which of course ended very badly for him, and David HaMelech regained his throne. This happened in the last years of David's life. David was 67 years old when that happened. It was the 37th year of his reign. He lived till 70, and he ruled for 40 years. And what was the story? That David HaMelech said Tilim. That was the secret weapon. That's the Shalom. David's men and Avshalom's men fought fiercely, and they fought to the death. This was a real feud. But David HaMelech sat in the palace. His soldiers would not let him go to the front, and he said Tilim. And his Tilim got into the heads of Avshalom's soldiers, into the heads of his enemies. And the Gemara says in Yerushalmi, Anshe Avshalom mispalalu l'shleimesh al David. Avshalom's soldiers prayed for the peace, for the safekeeping of David HaMelech. They wanted Avshalom to win the war, but they didn't want David to be killed. Now, how can you fight an enemy where you're hoping that the king of your enemy's nation survives and thrives and is left alone? And it undermined Avshalom's soldiers' ability to fight with the necessary reckless abandon that a soldier needs in order to be victorious. And therefore, David says, Padah b'Shalom. Or to say what I'm saying in broader words, we know from Chassidus that the difference between David and Shloimeh is that David is Milchama and Shloimeh is Shalom. David HaMelech fought many, many wars. The pasuk says about him, Dam l'Arev shafachti, he spilled much blood, which disqualified him from building the Beis HaMikdash. Shloimeh HaMelech was a ish of Shalom, Shleim Mishmei v'Shalom v'Shal v'Eten al Yisrael v'Yamav. He built the Beis HaMikdash. But at the very end of David's life, in the last few years, even David began to approach the idea of peace. And this is the Taich Padah b'Shalom, that he had a struggle. And it was decided on a level of Shalom. And of course, this would be brought to a much higher level during the reign of Shlomo HaMelech. And to a much higher level still in the times of Mashiach Tzidkenu. And as I described to you in my introduction, the constant is that Shalom means a weapon from above, a higher light. But because it's a higher light, it reaches lower. And the degree to which the light is higher affects the degree to which it goes below. And the highest of all lights, which is going to be revealed, Lasted Love, is going to embrace the whole creation in one point, and therefore bring the light out of the darkness itself, make the darkness itself shine, as you'll see in Mitzvah Hashem and the Maamar. But we're not ready to go into those particulars. Let's learn the Aschol V'Sim. Let's start from the beginning again. Padah b'Shalom nafshi. David HaMelech, King David says, my soul was redeemed in peace, because many were with me. And remember again in the Pasuks, reading alone, Padah b'Shalom means only Torah, and about 10 lines down. The Rebbe is going to bring the Gemara that's talking about Torah, Veda, and Milas Chasadim, that the three of them together affected the Padah b'Shalom. The case of Rabbeinu Zaken, Ba'al HaGiyula v'Asimcha. The Alter Rebbe writes in the second line of the Maamar, I was reading in the book of Psalms, in the Pasuk Padah b'Shalom nafshi, Kedem shekarasi, Pasuk shel Yachar, before I could begin the subsequent Pasuk. Yatzasi b'Shalom, I went out of prison in peace. Mehavaya Shalom, from the Eibishter who was called peaceful. We know that the Rabbeim used to say Tilim all the time, from the Baal Shem Tov on. And that the Tilim they said was divided liyamei HaChedesh, into the days of the month, like we do Chitas today. Of course, then Chitas wasn't known, at least not to Chassidim, but they would say Tilim is divided liyamei HaChedesh. If you say Tilim as it's divided to liyamei HaChedesh, your Tes Kislev is far away from Padah b'Shalom. Your Tes Kislev is Psalm 90, Kapitel Tzadik, and Padah b'Shalom is Psalm 55, Perek Nun Hey, Kapitel Nun Hey. But the Alter Rebbe said Tilim b'shufi, when they were under duress, that Rabbeim would add extra Tilim, and extra Tilim meant that instead of saying Tilim it is divided according to the days of the month, they said Tilim is divided according to the days of the week. And Tuesday, which is the year the Alter Rebbe was released from prison, was Yutes Kislev. It says this idea. It says Padah b'Shalom Nafshi. So David HaMelech was saying Padah b'Shalom Nafshi mikrovli. I'm sorry, the Alter Rebbe was saying Padah b'Shalom Nafshi mikrovli ki b'rab ha'yemadi because it was Tuesday. And he wrote a letter saying that as he said that pasuk before he could begin the next pasuk, he was released, and then he goes on to describe how the Goyim acknowledged his victory. And of course the Rebbe explains in the Sichos that the significance of Goyim acknowledging the victory, because Goyim don't have free will when it comes to Yiddish and mitzvahs, and therefore there's a psak din shel bezin shel maila that yad achsidim al yena. Says the Rebbe, umizeh moving, which proves the moving mizeh sheteichen hakosav shayach el golos Rabbeinu Azak. The Alter Rebbe's redemption is connected to Padah b'Shalom, even though Padah b'Shalom is associated with David HaMelech at the very end of his reign, and Shlomo HaMelech and Mashiach. There is an Inyan of Padah b'Shalom in the story of the Alter Rebbe. V'hinei ge'ulas Rabbeinu Azaken. We know that the Alter Rebbe's release from prison was not about the fact that there was someone who didn't like him and put him in jail because he spoke Lashon Hara, but rather it was a kitrug that came from heaven, and the Misnagdim or whoever it was that had the Alter Rebbe incarcerated, they were simply a puppet. But really, in fact, it was a symbol of what's going on Lamaila. Asher sibas hakitrug v'hamaisa lamata, the cause for the critique and the incarceration down here, was based on a discussion happening on high about the question of revealing the secrets of Torah, as they were revealed in a way that everybody can understand them, reach every person. And we all know the famous story, Alter Rebbe sitting in jail, and he was visited by the Heilige Magid and his Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov. And the way the story is told in some places, the Baal Shem Tov said to the Magid, Zogim ez al Zogim Torah. The Baal Shem Tov was not the Alter Rebbe's Rebbe. The Magid was. So the Baal Shem Tov therefore couldn't say to the Alter Rebbe directly to say Torah. He told the Rebbe, the Magid, his Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe's Rebbe, that he should say Torah. And when he finished, the Baal Shem Tov said to the Bezitcher Magid, he's repeating exactly as I said it to you. And then the Alter Rebbe asked them, why am I sitting in jail? And they answered him, because he's spreading chassidus. So the Alter Rebbe proposed that when he goes out of jail, he should stop. And they said, absolutely not. Whether you should or shouldn't have started is a different question, but now that you started, you should continue. Even more than before, which is of course what the Alter Rebbe did. So the Rebbe says, Sibas kitrug v'amaisa lamata. The reason down here there was a critique and an arrest is mitzad hashakla v'tarya lamayla, because on high there was a discussion. Al dvar afotzas rozei Torah, about dissemination of the secrets of Torah. Be'ezgal in a revealed way, v'achi yagil l'kol echad ve'echad, that reach every person. And the Rebbe concludes, v'kasher hoya psak din lamayla, lahafetz rozei Torah, when the heavens decided that Chassidus is a right to be in this world and it should be revealed, skip the parenthesis, nizbat lamamela din lamata. The judgment that he was nullified, v'yatzel l'chedus, and he was freed. And we say in conjunction with this story, Padah b'Shalom. Alter Rebbe sat in jail. That was a combative situation. He went out of jail through much struggle. And we say that the nature of his victory from going out of jail to being a free man is an from Padah b'Shalom Nafshi. Says the Rebbe, Mizeh move, and since all of us appreciate that Alter Rebbe's arrest was not about a davar gashmi but a davar ruchni, it explains, Sheteichen hakasu Padah b'Shalom Nafshi shayach le'inyan afatas teres hachasidus. Pardon me, that the pasuk Padah b'Shalom has a relationship with spreading chassidus. So, besides for the classic understanding of Padah b'Shalom that I mentioned, which is that you have a weapon which is transcendent, which is above, which is so strong that it overwhelms any opposition, there is a specific relationship between Padah b'Shalom and Chassidus, which is reflected, which is indicated in the fact that this is what the Alter Rebbe did, b'kasher with Yutes Kislev. And of course, the Maamar wants to delve deeper into the relationship between Chassidus and Padah b'Shalom, as you'll see later on in Mitzvah Hashem. V'hinei Amar Azal, the Gemara says, Padah b'Shalom nafshi mikrov v'gemer. Mikrov v'gemer, that David HaMelech says, my soul was redeemed in peace from a battle which I fought. And of course, we explained earlier this was the very end of David HaMelech's life, because that's when they achieved it. Of them, Zog the Gemara says on this pasuk, But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God Almighty says, when a person learns Teda on the level of Asik, and he's involved in doing acts of kindness, right? There's a difference between Gemilas Chasadim and Tzedakah. Tzedakah means to give money away. Gemilas Chasadim means to lend money and to help people where you stay involved with them beyond the nickel that you gave them. With a minyan, so if you do these three things on the way of Asik, the Eibush says it's considered ki'ilu pada'ani, as though they redeemed li, myself, ulabane, and my sons, mi bein umet ha'elim, from the nations of the world. So this is, as I told you in my beginning earlier on in this class, is the Gemara. It's not explaining the pasuk per se, it's explaining the pasuk as it's explained in the Gemara. And basically the difference is that the pasuk by itself speaks only about shalom, which will be, from a mystical perspective, Teda. And the Gemara includes Teda, Aveda, and Gemilas Chasad. Says the Rebbe Valpizeh, now that we add not just the pasuk, but the Gemara on this pasuk, Yesh Leimar, we can add the Neisef ala Shayches Dafatzes Teda Sachasidus. Besides for the fact, or in addition to the fact, that this pasuk Padah v'Shalom is connected to spreading Chasidus, in as much as Chasidus is Teda. To the content of the pasuk as it's understood literally. P'diya b'Shalom, redeeming in peace. And of course the logic would be, as I explained to you before, that the concept of Padah v'Shalom is that you have a weapon that totally tips the balance that allows for the krov, for the battle to take place in one direction over another, which is so strong that it becomes a peaceful end. And Chassidus is such a weapon. Chassidus itself is the shalom that tips the scale towards good in a way that's predominant. Says the Rebbe, it is that afatzas habateros haChassidus, that the spreading of Chassidus, shayeches, is connected not only to Chassidus itself, but l'inyan ha'oisik, to someone who does on a level of Asik, of Teda, Gmach, or Mispalel Masiv. So the question is, until this Gemara, we read the pasuk that Padah v'Shalom goes on Chassidus, and with this Gemara we understand that the effect of Padah v'Shalom, the inyan of Padah v'Shalom, is achieved through Teda, Aveda, and Gemilas Chasad, and we want to understand both of these ideas. Pedig Beis. V'hinei, Pirush HaPoshat, because of Zeh, the simple reading of this pasuk, Padah b'Shalom nafshi mikravli, my soul was redeemed peacefully from a war which I was fighting. Ki b'rabim ha'yumadi, whatever that means, is asher ki b'rabim ha'yumadi u'nesinas tam. The word ki is a reason, because. How is it that Padah b'Shalom nafshi, my soul was redeemed peaceably or peacefully or in peace? It's because rabim, because many were with me, lePadah b'Shalom nafshi. And of course, one of the ideas which is going to be brought in this Maamar and in the Sikha that follows it, from the Mittler Rebbe's Maamar, that one of the understanding of the Ki b'Rabim ha'yumadi is Yochid she'rabim tzrichim lei. David HaMelech is a private man, he's an individual person. But he's a person that many people need him, Rabim ha'yumadi. And because he's needed by many, he has the Keach HaRabim, the Keach HaTzibah, the power of the many. And because he has the power of the many, this is why the Padah b'Shalom happens. Hainu, and the Rebbe explains, you can fight and you can win. And it's called Padah, you're redeemed, it's over. But it's called P'diyah Mitech Melchama. When it's over, it was from war, which means to say that in theory it can flare up again. And then there is a Maila B'P'diyah Zu, a Padah b'Shalom. There's another concept, but there's a war, that one side wins, the other side loses, and there's a redemption of the winner, of the one who defeats the opposition, but it's called Shalom, it's peaceful. What affects that the redemption should be peaceful is key, it's because Rabim ha'yumadi, many are with the victor. And the question is this, first of all, Mahu inyan Padah b'Shalom dafke, what's the concept of doing peaceably? And more specifically, that the idea that many are with him, and in this case with David HaMelech or with Shlomo HaMelech, that affects the Padah b'Shalom. What's the connection between the Rabbim and Padah b'Shalom? It's almost as if you have a third idea, The first idea is that we focus on the word Shalom alone, Padah b'Shalom. The second idea is that we focus on three things: Teira, Aveda, and Gemilas Chasadim, but not in that order. Teira, Gemilas Chasadim, and Tefillah. And the third idea is that the Rabbim Hayumad, the effect of Padah B'Shalom. Continues the Rebbe V'hinei B'drosh Azal al Pasuk on this Gemara in Brachas that connects Padah B'Shalom not only to Chassidus, not only to Teira, but to Teira, Gemilas Chasadim, and Tefillah. That the Gemara says, and the Alter Rebbe repeats it again. One is engaged in learning and in giving Gemilas Chasadim and davening with a minyan. Pirish Rashi explains on the Gemara that Teira is called Shalom, like it says, it says Shalom. And Gemach is called Shalom for obvious reasons, because you're doing a favor to another person. So Teira is called Shalom, and Gemilas Chasadim is called Shalom. So it says Padah B'Shalom Nafshi. So he translates Shalom not as the effect, I was redeemed in a peaceable way, but as a cause. Padah B'Shalom, because of Shalom, because of peace, I was redeemed. And what is the peace that redeems me? Teira Gemilas Chasadim. And then it says that Mispalel Matzibur, who inyan ki berabim hoyu mother davening with a minyan, means many are with me. Many means a minimum of 10. A tzibur. Ki the pirish Rashi Sham, as Rashi says in Brachas, that berabim hoyu mother she espalelu imi. So the word Shalom accounts for Teira and Gemilas Chasadim, and the words Ki B'Rabim Hoyu Mother accounts for Tefillah. V'hainu, in other words, on 5 lines from the bottom of the page. Shagimel and Yonim El, these 3 ideas of Teira, Gmach, or Tefillah B'Tzibur, Teira and Gemilas Chasadim, and davening with a minyan, Mechulakim or Machalkam, the base Chalukes, are in 2 groupings, 2 categories. Teira and Gemilas Chasadim is Shalom, and Tefillah Ki B'Rabim Hoyu Mother. Says the Rebbe, 3 lines from the bottom of the page, V'tzarech lahav, and the question now is, Ma mechale gimel and yonim el l'shtei chalukes. Why is the 3 weapons that are really ultimately all shalom, that affect the peace, divided into these 3 groups? Teira, Gemilas Chasadim is one group, and Tefillah is the other. Gam tzarech lahav, and the last question is, Ma she'omru kol ha'esek, that the pasuk, the way the Gemara explains it, is talking about the person engaged in Teira, Gemilas Chasadim, and Tefillah. Shemadaber kan b'inyan ha'adam. It's about the human being was Esek b'Teira, as opposed to v'lay b'inyan Teira, Gmach, und Tefillah atzma. In this Gemara, we focus not on the power of Teira and the power of Gemilas Chasadim and the power of Tefillah, but on the Esek, the person engaged in Teira, Gemilas Chasadim, and Tefillah. And why do we do that? And the Rebbe says, normally, Lashna Amurga B'kama Makemus would be Al Shleisha Dvarim Ha'ela Meimed. Turn to page Mem Zayin, Teira Aveda Gemilas Chasadim. You focus on the noun, Teira Aveda Gemilas Chasadim, not on the verb, not on the person engaged. And here it says Kol Ha'esek, the verb, the one involved in Teira Gemilas Chasadim and Aveda. The question is why. So really we have 4 parts, right? The first part is Padah B'Shalom. What's the concept of Padah B'Shalom? The second part is that Padah B'Shalom becomes 3 separate things: Teira, Gemilas Chasadim, and Aveda. The third part is that Padah B'Shalom is because of Ki B'Rabim Hayu Imadi. And the fourth is, why is it that when we divide it up into 3, Teira and Gemilas Chasadim go together and Tefillah is separate? It's the first page of this very, very deep and involved Maamar. Now what's going to happen between here and the end of the Maamar? What's going to happen between here and the end of the Maamar is what I told you in the introduction. We're going to introduce ourselves to the concept of Oid, of light. And Padah B'Shalom, redemption, that's peaceful, comes from something above. And the light shines, and because it's coming from higher, it's a transcendent light, has a deep effect lower. It touches the darkness in a very powerful way. But they're equal and opposite. The higher the source of the light, the deeper it digs in the darkness. And he's going to break it up into stages: David, Shleima, Mashiach, and so on. Ultimately, the Alter Rebbe is going to say that there's a light, and this light is really Pnimiyas HaTeira, Chassidus, which is so deep that reveals the godliness of darkness itself. Or to say it in ultimate words, is a light that says that there's nothing outside of itself. There's no 2 things. There isn't a light and a world. There is only the light itself. And if I can show it to you inside, and I don't want to go into it, but I just want to show you the words. Just for one moment, the bottom of page Nun Gimel, the new paragraph, it says, V'yashleima da'atam al zeh, Listen to these words. Ki pnimiyas atik, the highest light, who beklolos atzmus ein sof. It's a level of ein sof called atzmus. De lagabe. Now turn to page Nundalid. Atzmus ein sof. When you're talking about the level of ein sof called atzmus, ein shum mitzias shechutz mimena. There's nothing outside of it. Va'adarabah, to be sure, amita simatze hu hametzias shall call it himself. The truth of the Eibishter is the truth of the world itself. In other words, there's a light which is so high that you no longer are going to speak of it as a light shining into darkness. Because the very idea of light shining into darkness shows on a duality. But rather, there's a level of light which is so deep and so high that the darkness itself is, in essence, that light. And that's going to be the ultimate Padah b'Shalom. So this is how the Maamar is going to develop. Reveal light that elevates, transforms, is mevatel darkness. And the higher the light, the more profound and the more lasting is the effect on the darkness. Till the highest level of light is so deep that it reveals the godliness of darkness itself. That's how this Maamar is going to develop. I'm going to go all the way to Perek Yud Beis, bottom of page Nun Hey, and let's learn the end of the Maamar. Now I'm just repeating one more time that we have 4 issues. The first issue was Padah b'Shalom. The second issue was the 3 ideas of Teireh, Gemilas Chasadim, and Tefillah. The third idea is Ki berabim hayu imodi, that the many are the reason for the Padah b'Shalom. And the fourth idea is that Teireh, Gemilas Chasadim are in one group, and Tefillah is in a second group, and the idea of Kol ha'osek, that we don't talk about Teireh, Aveidah, Gemilas Chasadim themselves, but rather we talk about the person doing them. So we continue on Perek Yud Gimel, V'zehu Padah b'Shalom nafshi. The idea that the soul is redeemed and peacefully b'Shalom nafshi. And of course, there are many stages in this, the way it was by David HaMelech, the way it was by Shlomo HaMelech, and so on and so forth. And the ultimate Padah b'Shalom is going to be when Mashiach comes. V'hainu, this means, Sha'abadiyah b'tachas HaShalom. The redemption is with the ultimate of peace, v'ashleimus, and the most whole and peaceful and comprehensive condition of peace, which means, in other words, that the light which is coming from above, which renders the battlefield unequal and therefore affects that the enemy stops being an enemy completely, gam oivav yashlim imeh, which it makes the victory. Padah b'Shalom is on such a high level, shloi nisha shum menaged klal, there's no opposition, there's no opponent whatsoever. But when you say there's no opponent whatsoever, it's because you can kill the opponent. And it's because the opponent becomes a friend. And in the opponent becoming a friend, there are many levels, until the level where the opponent becomes part of the victor. And he gives several examples. Each of these lines, next handful of lines, is a whole perek in the Maamar itself. Number 1, it's not like when the Aron journeyed in the desert in times of Moshe Rabbeinu. Where it's written Kuma Havaya, that because Havaya stands up, that your enemies are dispersed and the ones who hate you run away, that even though the power of the Oren, the power of the Torah pushes away enemies, says the Rebbe, the fact that this effect of clarification is achieved through war, the enemy remains, the one who hates you remains, they run away. So the Aron had a great power, and of course we'll talk about that at length when we visit it in the Maamar itself. And the light of the Torah, which is inside the Aron, pushes away the enemy, but doesn't defeat him, it doesn't destroy him, it doesn't transform him, it just disperses him. Then there's a higher Madrege, Shlomo also achieved the peace. Shlomo HaMelech sat in Yerushalayim, and the whole world came to him because of his power, because of his fame, and because of his influence. Shlomo didn't have to go to where his enemies were, as did the Aron in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu. So they came to him automatically. Still, in the times of Shlomo HaMelech, the light of Shlomo, which traveled and brought sparks of godliness from the whole world to him, brought a clarity rakni tutzes elu, only to the kinds of sparks shahaya behem eza inyan shaler. There's such a light. In other words, the idea that everything in the world, including Klipa, the spark of the Eibush, that has levels. Shlomo HaMelech's light reached and brought out the light within the darkness, assuming that the sparks had some light of their own. And that becomes higher than Moshe Rabbeinu. And then there's a third level, Ki'im, moreover, Shegam HaNitzutzes, Shenechshechu, the sparks of godliness which are of Sholosh Klipos Atmeis Lagame, the most severe Klipos, where the Chaticha Atzmo Nasas Nevela, the darkness itself has become, the light itself has become dark, Yuchlu B'Kedusha, included in holiness. Meaning to say that the idea that Shlomo brings sparks of holiness to himself has two levels. The lower level is that it brings the sparks of holiness that are close to holiness. And the higher level, the deeper levels, are those sparks that are so deeply embedded in darkness, as though they themselves have been darkened, they're also brought to Kedusha. So you have the Oren, you have Shlomo being Mavar and Nitzutze Kedusha, Sheyesh Pem Eize Inyan Shaloir, and the idea that Shlomo Melech is Mavared, the Nitzutzes Shenechshechu. And then comes the fourth level, V'yeseiram Izeh, 3 lines in the bottom, Shegam HaNivra, the creation itself, the darkness itself, Hanif al Atzmei, the world, Leia Peil Shabei, not the spark of Hashem in the world, but the world within the world. In other words, the spark of the Eibishter in a creation, and you redeem the spark from within that creation, the creation is not included in the elevation, in the transformation, but that the creation itself, this is the highest level. That the light that you're shining is so deep that not only are you extracting the most deeply embedded sparks, you're extracting the godliness of the world, of the darkness itself. And that's the ultimate Padah b'Shalom, which is going to be when Mashiach comes. And of course the point is that it's a very high light. But it's a high light that doesn't transform, it's a high light that makes the creation respond to it until the creation in its entirety becomes one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says the Rebbe V'zehu, once we define Padah b'Shalom, and I suppose you could say that this was the explanation of the first part of the question. Yeah, Padah b'Shalom. What does Padah b'Shalom mean? Now we go to the third part of the question, where it says Ki berabim ha'yimadi. Zehu masher kosev Ki berabim ha'yimadi, that many are b'David HaMelech. The reason this Padah, this redemption happens peaceably, is Ki berabim ha'yimadi shekam b'chinas rab, also the many. Translates the Rebbe Eilush and Imtzayin bebechinas shus harab, those who find themselves in a public domain. K'mayim, it is Allah Pasuk, like it says in the Pasuk Nasa Loshen Rabim, when the Eibishter created man, he said, "Let us make man in plural." And the fact that the Eibishter said, "Let us make man in plural," is Torah. But it sets up the possibility for Klipa to say that there's more than one Rishus. And the Gemara says, Ksev, you have to write. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, write Nasa Loshen Rabim V'Reitz Litis Yita. Someone who wants to make a mistake, that's his business. That even the perspective that argues Rabbim, as if Chas v'Shalom, there's more than one Balabas in the world, Ha'yemadi joins together in the redemption of whoever it is, David HaMelech, Shlomo HaMelech, Mashiach, and so on. Shemisachtem b'tachas achtos, they join together. V'zeu ki. You see, Padah b'Shalom nafshi. I was redeemed peaceably. In other words, the redemption came from a higher light, which affects that the struggle is won in a way that it's not a struggle anymore. The enemy is vanquished and transformed, and therefore it's called peace. Has to do with ki b'rabi, because many are with me. Who nesinas tam al Padah b'Shalom. The reason the Padah, the pidyon, is peaceful is because the b'rabim ha'yimadi. In other words, sha'padia b'Shalom. When is the redemption peaceable? When dafka idezeh, only through the fact shegam b'chinas rabim, even when the many, meaning leirak nitzutzes de kedusha, not only the sparks of holiness, kiyim gam elosh and b'chinas rabim, the diversity of the klipa of the world itself, hayu imadi kam ta HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like the Gemara says about Anshe Avshalom that espalu over David, like I said earlier in the class. So how do you teach? There's a koyach of shalom that's so powerful that transforms Rabim into being one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But ki b'rabim ha'yimadi means something deeper, right? That not the shalom causes the b'rabim ha'yimadi, but that when the Rabim ha'yimadi join, you have real shalom. When the darkest klipa, when the world in itself, what he calls the nivra, hanifa, loya peil shabbat, right? Not the hand of Hashem in the creation, but the creation itself, the Rabbi becomes one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then you have the ultimate Padah b'Shalom. So we explained the first idea, Padah b'Shalom, and the third idea, ki b'rabim ha'yimad. And the Rebbe continues in the next paragraph, Hine, P'diyah zuhi adi avoid. This redemption involves 3 steps, as it says in the second part of the prefix to this Maamar, and in the fourth, which is Teira, Gemilas Chasodim, and Tfilah B'tzibur. Why? Because each of these 3 is Shalom. This paragraph is simply saying that there's Shalom and Teira, Shalom and Gamach, and Shalom and Tfilah B'tzibur. How? The Inyan Esig B'Teira is Pnimiyas HaTeira. When we say Teira, we mean over here Pnimiyas HaTeira, Kabbalah, and Chassidus. On the very highest levels, She B'chinas Eitz HaChaim, which is the tree of life. Skip the parentheses. Hainu Shahabirur, Shaydei Pnimiyas HaTeira, the way Teira, Chassidus, creates clarity in the world. It's shining a light, but it's shining a very deep light. A light that's so deep that totally transforms, and to say it more deeply, that it extracts the God within the world itself. It's not a war whatsoever. Skip the parenthesis. So the Rebbe says simply, the Gemara says that although basically the pasuk is speaking about one thing, Shalom, specifically there's 3 weapons, Teira, Gemilas Chasodim, and Avodah, and the Rebbe is going to argue each of them is a concept of Shalom, meaning to say a higher power that transforms. The same is true of being kind. See, the language of Malchus, the Malchus, right? That's the world within the world, not the Elikus within the world within the world, is redeemed by a light that comes to Pnimiyas HaKesed. And the Maamar is going to talk about Gemilas Chasodim, that it's higher than Tzedakah, Gans Harichis. Bottom line is, Gemilas Chasodim, like Torah, is a very transcendent light which extracts the godliness of darkness itself. And then it says Tfilah B'tzibur, that Tfilah B'tzibur, like Aseres Yemei Tshuva, and Aseres Yemei Tshuva does a Gila Pnimiyas HaKesed. So in short, the Torah we're talking about is called Shalom, Gemilas Chasodim we're talking about is called Shalom, and Tfilah B'tzibur is also called Shalom. So this Gemara is explaining that although the pasuk basically is saying Padah B'Shalom, specifically there's 3 weapons of Shalom itself: Teira, Gemilas Chasodim, and Tefillah. And the Maamar finishes, now we understand the relation between this pasuk and the Alter Rebbe's redemption. Because the Alter Rebbe's redemption was not about saving his life, it was about the revelation of Chassidus. Shenyon, who he was arrested for, and then when he was redeemed, he was permitted to spreading Chassidus to the outside. And of course, like the Rebbe emphasizes, the Mayon, the fountain itself, comes to Chutzah. What does it mean that the fountain should reach the most remote place? That the level of world within world. On the lowest level, the fountain should reach. And he explains, not only is water coming from the fountain, and because it continues to be attached to the fountain, it's called living waters. The fountain itself comes to Chutzah, and it transforms the darkness of the world itself with the godliness, which is Pnimiyas HaTeira and Chassidus. So the Alter Rebbe was revealing Chassidus, and then the subsequent Rabbeim were revealing Chassidus even more. And Chassidus is Torah, but it's the kind of Torah that's so deep that it finds the God within the darkness itself. And therefore his redemption is connected to Padah B'Shalom. This is the Pshat idea for spreading Chassidus Kosim Adam Al Mashiach comes. Because spreading Chassidus is Pnimiyas HaKesed, which is the highest level, and therefore it reaches the lowest level, Malchus Shabbat Malchus. V'ukameya Esik, B'teirog Gemilas Chasodim, U'mispal B'tzibur, as the Gemara says, that although in general, the idea of this redemption is called Padah B'Shalom, specifically there's 3 aspects to it: the Teira of Shalom, the Gmach of Shalom, and the Mispal B'tzibur of Shalom. Ashal Aidei said that through this Pada'ani, the Eibishter redeems, Liu Labone, Bein Umas Ha'elam, the Eibishter Kvayachal, and Yidden are redeemed from the whole world. Moreover, Asher Oz Yeh V'Esruach Hatuma Avir Min Ha'aretz, Hashem removes the spirit of uncleanness from the whole world. And the Rebbe brings the Rambam's pasuk that all the goyim are going to serve the Eibishter as one shchem, as one portion. V'hoya havaya lemelech al kol haaretz, v'yemu yihiyah the shem echad shemei echad. That's how the Maamar finishes. But there's a sikha, and the sikha is 4 pages. We're not going to learn the sikha in its entirety, but what the Rebbe does in the sikha is he answers the 2 questions that he didn't answer in the Maamar. We explained Padah B'Shalom. We explained Teira Gemilas Chasadim and Avodah, and we explained Kibiravim Hayimadi. The two questions that remained unexplained were the last two questions that the Rebbe asked on the first page, which were why we divided into two groups, Teira Gemilas Chasadim on one side, Avodah on the other, and why we focus on the person, Isaac, and not on Teira Avodah Gemilas Chasadim itself. So on page Nun Ches, the Rebbe answers the first of those two questions in two ways. And what he says is that Torah and Gemilas Chasadim are both coming from heaven to earth. Tefillah is coming from earth to heaven. And because Torah and Gemilas Chasadim are coming from heaven to earth, and Tefillah is coming from the bottom up, they're put into two groupings. Okay? Look at the second paragraph of page Chaz. I want to do this in a time-efficient way. Al Pi Zayuv, and this is the explanation for Masha Machala Gimel and Yonim Eilu Shtei Chalukis. That although all three are called Shalom, it's in two groups basically. Moreover, Masha Magdim Teira Gamach L'Tfila. Teira Gamach come first. Shebetchila Medaber Be'inyan HaKavona V'Tachas HaMechuvim. The first thing he discusses is the point. The point is that light should be brought from heaven to earth. But then, bringing light of the Eibush into the world. And then he speaks the way this is set up, which is a law of the tefillah through davening. In other words, the Rebbe says like this. The purpose, the end, is to bring the Eibush's light into this world. But in order to bring the Eibush's light into this world, the world needs to be prepared. And the preparation of the world is from the bottom up, which is called tefillah. So, chronologically, in the sequence of time, first you daven, then you learn, then you do Gemilas Chasadim. But the davening is a prerequisite. It's only setting it up. The point is that as a result of the bittul of tefillah, you bring the Eibush into this world through Teira and Gemach. So the pasuk divides them. Teira and Gemach are one, because that's the point, to bring the Eibush into this world. And tefillah is separate because it's what sets it up. And first you speak about the purpose, which is Teira and Gemach, and then you speak about Tefillah, which sets it up. So in other words, even though chronologically the order should be Tefillah, Gemilas Chasadim, Teira, Tefillah, Teira, Gemilas Chasadim, you put Teira and Gemilas Chasadim first because they're the point and the purpose, and then it says Tefillah. Now on the second column of page Nun Hey, the Rebbe asks several questions on the aforementioned explanation. The first is that even though Tefillah is only setting it up, isn't Tefillah first? That's the first question. And the second question is that nowadays, Teira is no longer the Ikir, Gemilas Chasadim is the Ikir, so why is Teira coming first? And the Rebbe explains that Teira is the lowest, Gemilas Chasadim is the second, and Tefillah is the highest. You can take a look yourself. But the Rebbe basically does, in this part of the Sikh, is explain why the three things, Teira, Gemilas Chasadim, and Tefillah are separate, and Teira, Gemilas Chasadim are first, because they're the point and the purpose, and Tefillah is only setting it up. In the second part of the Sikha, which is Siv Beis, the Rebbe discusses why the Alter Rebbe talks about the person rather than Teira, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim. And he says a very interesting thing. Teira, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim are meant to have a certain influence on the world. The Isaac, the person, is also meant to have an influence on the world. But in addition to the Isaac, the person having an influence on the world, there is what the person himself is. Look on page Nuntes, first full paragraph. V'hine. B'negel anyway, as far as we're concerned, which is Gulas Rabbeinu Azakir, the Alter Rebbe is being redeemed from prison, how they move and it's understood. Asher Gimel Dvarim Eilu Negel Adam Ha'eved. You're talking about the Alter Rebbe going out of jail. So you're not simply talking about Teira, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim hypothetically, but how it played itself out in the person, the Alter Rebbe, Hainu Rabbeinu Azakin, Asher Hu Nifta B'Sham, that he was redeemed. And therefore you say, Kol ha'Isaac b'Teira. You're not talking about Teira, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim per se, but the person who is involved in Teira, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim. And then the Rebbe goes on to say that the Alter Rebbe didn't have a minyan in jail. He may have had Teira, he may have had Gemilas Chasadim, but how did he have Tefillah b'tzibur? So he says the last line of the next paragraph, that Tefillah Yachad Sharabim Tzichem Leuk made Tefillah b'tzibur, that the Alter Rebbe was an individual that many people needed, and because the Alter Rebbe was an individual many people needed, he was one that was like many. And this sets up a moed in the kavod, a moed in the chiddush. The second question that was unanswered in the Maamar is why we speak about the person who's learning Torah, davening, and doing Milas Chasadim rather than the phenomena themselves. And the answer that he just gave is because we're talking about the actual Alter Rebbe who was redeemed from prison. But one of the things that came out is that the idea that the Alter Rebbe davened b'tzibur isn't true. Why not? He was alone in jail. So how does a man sitting alone in jail have a tzibur? And the answer is that he's Rabbim Yochet Rabbim Tzrichim Lei. And this he ties in to something else. What we're about to read, there's something else that he reads. This is where our Maamar converges with the Sicha of Inyana Shoteres HaChasidus. I started the class by telling you that in the very same Fabrenyim, the Rebbe said the Sicha, he also spoke the Sicha, this Maamar, he spoke the Sicha of Inyana Shoteres HaChasidus, on the essence of Chassidus. And in that Sicha, of course, he says that Chassidus is Yechida. So look what happens now. Last line, first column, page 1 test. V'hine. Yodua Pirish Rabbeinu Hazaken, the Alter Rebbe teaches, Ba'lagula v'asimcha. Top of the second column now, Al Maamar Azal and the Gemara kan the Yochet kan the Tzibur. That a whole year, in order for your davening to be guaranteed to be answered, Hein Kil Kabbalah Yimas, you have to have a minyan. And then when I said Asimei Tshuva, even when you daven alone, what's called Yochid, you're guaranteed that your tefillah should be answered. Now I want to emphasize that the Rebbe here seems to be saying that the concept of Kan B'Yochid, which is connected to Aseret Yimei Tshuva, is also connected to the idea that the Alter Rebbe was sitting alone in a jail cell, it's as if he davened with a minyan, because he was Yochid Shirab Tzrichim Lei. What does the Alter Rebbe say in this Gemara? That during Aseret Yimei Tshuva, one is like 10. It says, the Rebbe Kan L'Yochid B'chin Zechidish HaBenefesh. What does it mean that there's a time of year that one davens like a minyan? Because he's revealing his Yechidah. During Aseret Yimei Tshuva, every year he reveals his Yechidah. The Alter Rebbe in prison, because he's Yochet Shirab Tzrichim Lei, was revealing his Yechidah. Says the Rebbe, Umizeh Shagamora Medama Kan L'Tzibur, L'Inyan Kan L'Yochid. That the Gemara equates the community, 10 Yidden to a Yochid, which is connected to Yechidah. Davening with a minyan, and the way a yochid is like a tzibur, including the Alter Rebbe being like a tzibur, is the madrega of yechida. And this is the deeper reason why the Gemara doesn't speak about Teira, Vedic, Milas Chasadim, but speaks about the Oisik b'Teira, Oisik b'Milas Chasadim, and Oisik b'Tfilah, because he's speaking about the kind of Tfilah which reveals Yechidah Shebenefesh. Says the Rebbe, the Binyan Asfiris is Primius HaKeser, which is higher than all things. And let's go to the next paragraph. Al Pizeh Yuvan is therefore understood. That Masha Eimer Kan Kol Oisik. We don't focus on Teira, Vedic, Milas Chasadim per se, but the person involved in Teira, Vedic, Milas Chasadim, Shemedaber Negel HaAdam, because the inyan of Yechidah is L'mayla B'Bechin HaSelam. Yechidah is above the world. Yechidah is really above Teira, Vedic, Milas Chasadim. It's above everything. And the Yechidah, which is totally above the world, is what brings godliness to the Madrega of Malchus. Shabbat Malchus, the lowest darkness, like it says in the Maamar. He doesn't speak about Teira, Veda, Milas Chasadim per se. Which have a relationship to the world. Because the person has a level in his neshama in relationship with which there is no world at all. Yechidah Shalei, which is Lamayla Minyan Ha'el. So by saying Kol Oisik, so first of all he's saying Kol Oisik because we're talking about a person, the Alter Rebbe. And second of all, by saying Kol Oisik, we're revealing an inyan which is above Teira, Vedic, Milas Chasadim, the inyan of Yechidah. And then of course the Rebbe goes on to say that Chassidus is the Madrega of Yechidah, like it says Taka in the Sicha of Inyana Shal Teira Chassidus. And when you reveal Chassidus, which is the Madrega of Yechidah, you make it possible to reveal the Yechidah in the whole world. So this was, we learned very little, right? We learned 2 pages. But I think it was a wonderful class. We learned the beginning and the end, which means we understood the Pasuk, which is very special. And in Mitzvah Hashem, in the next couple of classes, we'll learn what's called in the culture the Biur, the Maamar itself.